Hey everyone, this is Teresa from Base 10 Montessori, and today we are going to work on the chain stitch for embroidery. Now if we take a look at our instructions, this is the chain stitch right here. That's what we're going to be working on. And the chain stitch, it says, is number 3. That's the color, so let's look at that. Number 3, that's the color we're going to use. And it says that we're going to work with 1 strand, but after going through the outline stitch and the back stitch, I really did not like doing 1 strand. I think it's a little more difficult. So I think I'm going to try 2 strands today, and I still think that there is enough left of the color that I'm going to be able to do some of the other projects that they have on the side here. It looks like this is the exact same color. So it says number 3 color, number 3 color. They each say 1 strand, but I think that I like 2 strands better. So let's do that today and see if that works a little bit better. 1 strand tends to get a bit tangled up. So with that being said, let me show you what the chain stitch can look like in a project, and then we'll look at the instructions. So right here I have a finished project, and right down here is where I used a chain stitch. I haven't used this stitch very often, but I did use it here very minimally, and it's kind of a fun stitch to do. And if any of you have done the Lazy Daisy stitch, it's similar to that with a bit of a twist. So it starts out like a Lazy Daisy stitch, and then we're going to just do something a little bit different towards the end of the stitch to make it a chain stitch. So right here we have our chain stitch instructions. So you're going to see we're going to make a loop with it, and then really essentially what you're doing is making a loop inside of another loop. And it's much easier to demonstrate this than to talk about it or show it in these instructions. So let me prep everything, get my needle ready, and let's start our first chain stitch. And for our chain stitch today, like I said, I didn't enjoy working with 1 strand on the other patterns, so I am going to piece out 2 strands today. So that means we're just going to take 2 of these strands of our embroidery floss, and we're going to separate it out. And then we will work with the 2 strands instead of 1. And I think that that will be better for me. And if you think it'll be better for you, give it a try. Otherwise, you can always go back to doing 1 strand. So here we go. I've got my needle threaded. Remember, this isn't like typical sewing. We are not going to match our ends together and tie a knot. We're going to leave it with just the 1 end. And if you would like, you can always tie a knot in your single strand right here. And I don't usually tie a knot for my embroidery, but sometimes it does help to get started. It's a personal preference. If you're used to not tying a knot, that's okay. If it adds an extra step that's too difficult for your student, then I would skip it and just help them hold it in place. But if they want to do a knot, that's not a problem. So right here, we're working with our chain stitch. Let me show you what the first step looks like. So we're going to start at the very beginning and pull our thread all the way through. Now, this is what's tricky about the chain stitch. You're going to put your needle back in almost exactly in the same place, just a tiny bit over. And what you want to do is keep a loop. We're not going to pull our thread all the way through. We're going to keep a loop out. So right about there, let's straighten out my loop. We can keep it right about there, maybe shorten it just a little bit. And so now we have this nice little loop. And for our next step, we're going to go and bring our needle through again. But make sure not to get rid of that loop. Keep that loop on there. Make sure I'm not getting tangled on this side. So now we have this loop and this thread right here. So much like the Lazy Daisy stitch later on, we're going to snug our loop up with the thread through it. But this time we're going to stay inside of the loop and make our next stitch. So We're having one stitch up through the loop and now one stitch down through the loop. So hopefully you can see that. Now I'm going to find a spot to go down. So we're going to go down through our next hoop, but we're not going to pull it tight. We're going to leave a loop on. Move a little forward with our next stitch. Go through our loop. You want to snug it up a little bit. You don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose. You see? Snug it up just a little bit more. There we go. Stop before you pull it all the way through. Make sure you have the loop. Next stitch. Here's our loop. Pull your needle through. Give it a snug. Okay, keep your loop right here, right? Needle goes through. Look at our nice chain that's starting. So it is a pretty simple stitch, but it takes a bit of coordination. The difficult part is remembering to keep your loop and not tightening it all the way down. And if you get it a little too tight, just give it a little tug. Back it back out a little bit. I'm glad I did 2 strands. This feels much better to me. I did not like doing the 1 strand up here. I wish I would have done 2 strands up here. That's my one regret so far for this kit. See, sometimes you pull it too tight, you just pull it back out again. It's pretty easy to fix. Make sure that you don't have a twist in your loop. Make sure that loop stays straight and doesn't twist. That's another tricky part of this one. And here's our last stitch right here. And instead of going back through the loop, I'm going to finish it off like a lazy daisy stitch and just pin it down to the outside of that loop for the last stitch. And here we go. Let's look at the back. And that's what the back looks like. And as usual, I like to weave in the ends instead of tying a knot. But you're free to tie a knot if you want to. I just like how smooth it is when you're finished and you don't have a knot on the back. All right, that should be good. Let's cut it. And we're done. So now we've done the outline stitch, the back stitch, and now the chain stitch. And then next lesson will be on the French knot.